Good morning, everyone. I'm Trista from High Fashion Sewing Machines in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, the Baby Lock girl, and I'm going to go over how to thread your Imagine Serger. Okay, so I've got my serger set up here with matching threads. The colors are matching to my thread chart. I use this fancy little sticky note just to keep me focused on which area of this whole threading chart that I need to look at. I'm going to first look here, and it says use the left and right needle for this 4-thread overlock. So let's see here. I have both needles in, and I wanted to point something out whenever you are putting your needles in. Right up here there's this little window, and you should see the shiny, the round top of the needle. You should be able to see it in the little windows, and they taper, so the right needle is a little lower, left needle is a little bit higher. Okay, so now when I open this machine, the tubular loopers will connect right here, but I have to do two things. I have to hold my button in and turn my hand wheel, and they'll click. Sometimes you might have to wiggle the hand wheel a little bit in this area whenever things are kind of lining up, depending on the machine there. So now my loopers are connected, and the order of threading doesn't matter, but it is important to make sure that it clicks in. Make sure your presser foot is up when you're doing this. That keeps your tension discs open so your thread can go into place where it needs to be. If your presser foot's down while you're threading, your thread will just be sitting on top of those tension discs in here. This machine does have a needle threader. The needle threader only works when the green marks on the side of the machine are lined up. See these two marks here and here? So I have to disconnect, line up those marks. Now my needle threaders will work. Right here's a little dial with the L and R, so I'm going to flip that over to the right side for my right needle. I bring this down, pinch my thread so that I can hold it straight across under that little hook, and then allow it to pull that thread through. Sometimes it gets stuck on the hook of the threader. There we go. Now I need to connect my loopers again. Now, my thread, I have the end of my thread right here. I'm going to pull it long, touch my knee with it so that I know my thread is long enough to go all the way through those loopers. If you hold about 1/2 inch of your thread, that's just about the right length to put it in there. If you're holding it out here, it's a lot more flimsy and harder to get put into the port. So about 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch. And you poke it in here. Let's see if I can angle this where you can see it. Okay, and then I push it a little bit more with my finger. Now you have a switch here for which port you're putting your thread in. We want to put it on the side that your thread is on. And there it is. My thread is through the looper. Touch your knee with your thread so it's nice and long. Same thing, about 1/2 inch or so. Poke it in there. Switch my thing here, and you're threaded. If you push slowly here, it's not quite enough force because your pressure that you're pushing here, and you can hear that difference versus a hard push. That hard push is what's going to force the thread through. When you're at this point, I like to take my threads, I sort of put my finger against the blade here and come down in front of the cutter, and then I come under the foot. Then I have all my threads under the foot and to the back. If you were to bring those threads right under here and they go in front of the cutter blade, they might cut a little bit too short for them to actually connect when you start stitching. Okay, so my threads are back. I'm going to slide this over, and that disconnects my loopers. If you can see those here, the visual really helps me, so I try to point those things out for you as well. So I'm going to slide this open, and now your parts can move when you press on your foot pedal. Now I'm going to look back to my threading chart and see that my 4-thread overlock is asking for selector A. And right here is where we see that. And sometimes I will move it just to make sure that it's on that same letter. Close the doors. Now right here, this shows your differential feed. And just to get a flat stitch, which is what we're going for right now, we want it to be on N. Okay, and then on the inside here, you have your stitch length and your stitch width. And something that has helped me quite a bit to keep these straight is the visual. So when I turn this, you might see right here, and if you're looking straight on, you can see the blade move. Where the blade is at will be the edge of your fabric. So for me, that visual really helps. Right in here, this little piece of metal, it's sort of like a finger, is there. When I switch from a standard stitch to rolled, so on your wheel here, you'll see standard and rolled hem. When you're on standard, that metal finger is out, stabilizing that edge of your fabric and your threads. When you turned it to rolled, that's what allows your thread to pull your fabric and turn it under for that rolled edge. So just having that visual maybe will help you remember which ones are which. I'm going to close up there. On the chart here, you have a length and width recommendation. Now these are flexible. For example, on the rolled edge, 3-thread rolled edge, it says 0.75, which is the lowest that you can go. So it's that very first, right here when you're on the 0, the arrow's there. So that first little click, that's your 0.70. Okay, or 4. So that's your whole range. So really, it's a personal preference, depending on your fabric you're using. So you'll want to kind of play with that and see. But I know that about 2.5 is sort of a regular stitch length. So we'll set it at that. And my width, I'm going to go wide, 7.5. Perfect overlock stitch. It's so pretty. I love that. Now we're switching from the 4-thread overlock to the 3-thread narrow. The only difference here is we're going to take that red thread off the machine, and we're going to take that left needle out. We're going to switch our selector from A to B. So let's jump in and do that. Your storage compartment here, that's where I keep my screwdriver for needles. Now when I'm taking the thread out and the needles, I like to cut my thread real short here so that it doesn't tangle up with the other threads. Okay, I lift my presser foot up and I just run the machine till that red thread comes out. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to turn this up and take the needle out. Lefty loosey. Then you'll want to tighten your screw so it doesn't fall out as you're stitching along. Okay. Now I'm changing my selector to B, and that's the only change I really need to make. Presser foot down. Sometimes your presser foot looks like it's down because this piece here is pressing the toe down so that your presser foot can push your fabric against your feed dogs to help it move. So you always want to make sure your presser foot's down. Look at that beautiful 3-thread Overlock Narrow. Perfect stitch. I love it. Going from the 3-thread Overlock Narrow to a rolled edge, I'm going to use selector D, and right there there's a little R, and that is very important. Remember that little piece we talked about? We're moving that out of the way, and we're going to selector D. That's the only two changes made. Look at that. Really nice 3-thread overlock stitch. Now every once in a while it might sort of pull your fabric, and if you just slide your thumb across it, that sort of sets the stitch, and look how smooth that fabric is now. Now the stitch length is totally variable, so you kind of play with that to get the look that you want, but those are the most common 3 stitches that I use on this machine. Okay, so just a review. We did the 4-thread overlock, removed that left needle that had the red thread on your threading chart, went from selector A to B, and did a 3-thread narrow overlock. Okay, and then from that one we went to the 3-thread rolled edge. We went from selector B to selector D, rolled the stitch length from a standard over to that rolled, and got a beautiful rolled edge. Works best on a single layer of fabric. And if you have other questions, let me know and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you. Have a great day.